Also, Jeffrey Toobin, CNN chief legal analyst, are in. I thought the fact of this interview was interesting in and of itself. It seemed that Justice Ginsburg wanted to send a message.
Right, John, I think that this interview had a few audiences. It had the audience of people like President Trump, who have also, in the past couple of years, gleefully speculated about filling Justice Ginsburg's seat. It had the audience of anxious progressives, both her fans and people who wish that she had retired during the Obama administration, who are really, really worried about the fact that she's had 3 bouts with cancer. And I hate to even legitimize these people by mentioning them on the air, but every day I hear from people who falsely claim that Justice Ginsburg has died or has a body double. And so I think that the reason that not only did she do this interview with Nina Totenberg on NPR, she did a video to make sure that everybody knows she's alive and well.
And not going anywhere, Jeffrey. I think she was making that clear.
You know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is about this tall. I would be surprised if she weighed 100 pounds. She's had cancer 3 times. She's basically had every disease known to humanity. And she is as tough as any NFL linebacker. I mean, this woman keeps coming back and back, and she is committed to that court. She's committed to the values which are not ascendant at the court at the moment, and she's going to stay there until there's a president to her liking.
But she, by the way, being committed to the court, she's also committed to the other justices. She went out of her way to say nice things about Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, which is something that all the justices tend to do.
Exactly. I mean, there is a culture of comedy, of getting along that wasn't always true at the Supreme Court. I mean, it has been a nice nest of vipers in the past, but basically since Rehnquist, the court makes a real effort to be collegial with each other, and that continues today.
In terms of her plans in her tenure, there was an exchange. We learned over the last few days that she went on vacation with John Paul Stevens, who just passed away at age 99. They went to a conference overseas in Portugal, and she talked about this conversation she had with John Paul Stevens, and I want to play this sound where she talks about telling Stevens about a dream she had about staying on the court as long as him. Listen.
I said, and my dream is that I will stay at the court as long as he did. And his immediate response was, stay longer.
And again, Aaron, I don't think you tell that story unless you are sending the message to everybody, both fans and critics, that, look, I'm not going to quit. I can't predict what my health will be in a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, but I'm not going anywhere.
John, I think the work is really what sustains her. She also told Nina Totenberg that that's what got her through her last bout with cancer. I think the reason she hasn't retired is because she loves being a Supreme Court justice. Her job is her life. At the same time that she is working at full steam and putting out opinions at a fast clip, she's traveling the world. Justice Stevens retired at the age of 90. As you said, Justice Ginsburg is 86. Staying even longer would be if the potential of a Trump second term. She's saying, I'm in it for the long haul. Of course, actuarially, it's a little scary, but that's her intention for sure.
Yes, 86 is not the new anything. 86 is still 86. But John Paul Stevens retired at 90, and wrote 3 books during his 90s and died at 99. I mean, there is something about the water at the Supreme Court that adds to longevity. There's no question.
I talked to John Paul Stevens. I went down and interviewed him at the end of April, and he was still bragging about how good he was at ping pong. One of the things, one of the things that Stephen also said to me in terms of policy is Justice Stevens told me he was against the idea of expanding the court beyond 9 justices, and Justice Ginsburg weighed in on it also. Listen.
9 seems to be a good number, and it's been that way for a long time. I have heard that there are some people on the Democratic side who would like to increase the number of judges. If anything would make the court appear partisan, it would be that.
It's interesting, Jeffrey, both Stevens and Ginsburg basically saying this is not the way to change the court.
And Franklin Roosevelt tried to change the number of justices. I think a lot of people don't realize that the number of justices is not set in the Constitution. Congress can change it. But ever since Ulysses S. Grant was president, it's been at 9 justices, and I just don't see that changing regardless of what happens at the court.
So, Arun, one other thing, and we don't have the sound here, and I want to ask you this and give you credit for it, because in your work on Justice Ginsburg, you've really brought this to light. She was asked directly what her greatest achievement alignment is in her life. And you would think someone who sits on the Supreme Court would say, my time on the court, or this decision, or that dissent. But no, she referred back to her time as a lawyer, as an advocate in the 70s and 80s. I'm sure you were not surprised by that.
Well, I think even if she hadn't become a Supreme Court justice, she would still be someone who transformed our constitutional understanding of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a man. She always said it's not just women's liberation, it's also men's liberation. And I think that that work of making sure that the Constitution recognizes that we're all human beings regardless of gender is going to endure.
All right, Erin Carmona. Jeffrey?
Well, I was just going to say, as Thurgood Marshall was to the civil rights movement, as a litigator, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was to feminism, and even if she had never been appointed a judge of any kind, she would be a major, major figure in our history.
The most successful lawyer sitting on the Supreme Court.
By a leaps and bounds compared to anyone else on the court.
All right, Jeffrey Toobin and Erin Carmona, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And she can bench press more than me. All right, meanwhile, right, exactly. All right, thanks to our international viewers for watching. For you, CNN Newsroom with Max Foster is next. For our U.S. viewers, breaking news in Puerto Rico. Let's get right to it.
Today, I announced that I will be resigning from the position of governor.
An explosion of joy, people here in Olsen Juan after they learned Governor Ricardo Rosselló will be resigning.
This is a huge victory for the people of Puerto Rico.
I don't think you reviewed a report that is as thorough, as fair, as consistent as the report that we have in front of us.
Did you actually totally exonerate the president?
No.
Donald Trump is not above the law. He's not. But he damn sure shouldn't be below the law.
The American people now realize more fully the crimes that were committed against our Constitution.
This is New Day with Alison Camerata and John Berman.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to your new day. It is Thursday, July 25th. It's 8 o'clock here in Washington, D.C., the morning after Robert Mueller's testimony. We will get to that. We do have important breaking news, though, first from overnight. Celebrations, you can see it right here, erupting in the streets of San Juan in Puerto Rico after the island's embattled governor, Ricardo Rosselló, announced he is resigning. The news was made in a video, and it was played in overhead speakers for hundreds of thousands of people to hear.
So the governor says he will step down next Friday. This after weeks of massive protests, touched off by a corruption scandal in his administration and those leaked communications between the governor and his deputies. CNN's Rafael Romo has been live for us all morning in San Juan with the breaking details. What's the situation at this hour?
Hi, Allison. Good morning. Here at the governor's mansion, which will have a new occupant very soon after the resignation of Governor Ricardo Rosselló, which, by the way, won't be effective immediately. It will be on August 2nd. But it was a surreal scene yesterday. We were able to witness the moment when the announcement came, and there were thousands and thousands of people here. They all erupted into cheers. They were singing. They were dancing, incredibly elated. And we should remind our viewers that people had been protesting for 12 days, and it took 15 days from the very first time the governor apologized for participating in that secret chat in which him and his 11 of his closest aides say things that are very racist and homophobic and very offensive to many people here in Puerto Rico. And so now it is not the end of the situation, because Puerto Rico still has to go through a transition period after the governor's resignation is effective on August the 2nd. Presumably, the Secretary of Justice, Wanda Vázquez, will be sworn in as the next governor of Puerto Rico, but that's something that cannot be taken for granted. Now, this is happening because the Secretary of State has already resigned, and Puerto Rico is also going through a difficult situation. First of all, it's recovering from hurricanes Maria and Irma, who hit this island on 2017, and it's also immersed in a deep financial crisis. John, back to you.
I'll take it, Rafael, because I have a question for you. So Rosselló's potential replacement, Wanda Vázquez, is facing some possible problems of her own. What are those?
Yeah, there was an ethic investigation. She was the target of this investigation. She was cleared, but it is no secret to people here on the island that the relationship between her and the president of the Senate, and they would have to work together to make this government work, is not the best it's ever been. And so they have to build together a new government. Many of the members of Rosselló's cabinet had already resigned, and there's as many as 12 vacant positions. So that's the open question. If the relationship is bad already, how are they going to be able to work together for the benefit of Puerto Rico and the people who live here on the island? Allison, John.
All right, Rafael Romo for us on the streets of San Juan. Obviously, dramatic developments overnight. What will happen today? Please stand by there. Keep us posted. We're going to turn now to Robert Mueller's testimony. The big question here in Washington this morning, what happens now? Joining us now, two men who know what it's like to be in the hot seat. Andrew McCabe, the former FBI acting director who was fired by President Trump 2 days before he was set to retire. He is a key figure in the investigation that led to the Mueller report. And John Dean, formerly a Nixon White House counsel, the star witness in the Watergate hearings. He is now a CNN contributor. John, let me start with you. So what changed? We heard from Robert Mueller yesterday. What's different this morning?
First of all, I'm most struck with the fact that Trump's mantra is in deep trouble. No collusion. That was certainly shown. There is collusion. While Mueller might have been very reticent in wanting to talk about the details, he certainly did eliminate the fact that there wasn't collusion, as well as obstruction. He certainly knocked down the obstruction claims. So I think that's one of the things he's done. It has to have its impact. I think I disagree with a lot of journalistic take that this is not going to do what the Democrats want. Most people haven't even heard of this story. The 97% of America that's not read the report, I think they're going to hear for the first time what's in that report. It's certainly the highlights, because I think it was some very effective exchanges when the leading questions like Nadler's or Adam Schiff's statements, the initial ones, as it wore on, it didn't hold up quite as well.
Well, we want to play one of those moments, John Dean, and get your reaction to this. This is where he was asked about the president actually being charged after he leaves office. So listen to this.
Could you charge the president with a crime after he left office?
Yes.
You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office?
Yes.
Okay, he answered those quite quickly and unequivocally.
And that was one of the Republican members of the committee who I don't think expected that answer. I don't think he knew what answer he was going to get. It happened to be one of the best. I think it was one of the ace questions that came up yesterday, that the trouble this man is in once he loses the protections of the presidency.
So just to be clear, Robert Mueller yesterday did confirm once again that he did not see enough evidence to charge conspiracy. He was asked about the difference between collusion and conspiracy, and at one point that got muddy there, but he didn't want to talk about the idea of collusion, which he says is not a term that is used or important here. Andy McCabe, I want to get your take on where we are this morning. Josh Gerstein of Politico has noted that in the past, Democrats have looked or hoped maybe Robert Mueller would give them some holy grail to take the next step. Well, he's not going to do that. Democrats in Congress, they're the ones who have to make a choice about what they want to do with this. Do you think this made their choice easier?
Well, I certainly hope so, John. I think you're absolutely right. Both in his report and in his testimony yesterday, Director Mueller teed up a very hard choice for congressional Democrats. I think he walked as close as humanly possible to the edge of saying this conduct clearly qualified as obstruction. He's not going to tie off that package for them. He's not going to draw that conclusion. He did everything he could to avoid doing that yesterday. but the facts are what they are. It was an extraordinary day to listen to a senior, esteemed investigator detail again and again, mostly obviously relying on the terms in the report, facts and behavior that lay out a clear pattern of obstructive activity on the part of the president. It was a remarkable thing to hear, and something that it's almost impossible to imagine being said by any other president we're familiar with in the modern time.
Andy McCabe, I just want to stick with you for one more second, because we had spoken to you earlier in the week, and you had been involved in helping in the past to prepare Robert Mueller for some of these briefings, and you talked about the impeccable preparation that he went through, and reams of briefing books, et cetera. And look, his performance has been so dissected over the past 16 hours. I don't want to engage in too much of it, but only because you've been there before and after. Just want to know what you saw in terms of his preparation.
Yeah, Allison, I don't doubt that he went through that same sort of preparation this time. But you have to remember that this was a very different appearance than anyone, certainly that I've ever been involved helping Director Mueller get ready for. I'm quite sure this is the first time he's testified after having already provided a 400-page statement, essentially, to the world. So it's pretty clear to me that he did not want to take any chance of anyone from either side mischaracterizing or summarizing his report and his prior statement in any way differently than he had presented in the report. So I feel like he went into it with an unbelievably high degree of caution. I mean, you could see from the way he answered questions, he wouldn't agree to a single thing unless it was a direct quote from the report itself. He asked repeatedly for the sites that people were referring to. I think he was just, you could say, overly cautious about not wanting to change any of the phrasing from the way it appeared in the report.
Andy, can I ask you, because when you look at the key facts, the things that came out of yesterday, and Allison's been reading this all morning, I'll take over and do it right now. It came out yesterday, and Robert Mueller confirmed that the president, then candidate Trump, welcomed Russian interference and then lied about it. Generally, Trump's written answers were untruthful, that the encouraging of WikiLeaks during the campaign was problematic, and he went on to say that's an understatement, that he was not exonerated from obstruction. He fears, Robert Mueller does, that accepting foreign help is the new normal, and he was not seeking job as FBI director, as the president has falsely claimed. My question to you is, again, this morning, if all of those things are not enough to push the Democrats toward impeachment, does that frustrate you as someone who was in the middle of it all and someone is now looking for Congress to take action? Is it frustrating to you that you can have that list there and have it not necessarily be enough?
It's baffling to me, John. From my own experience at the very beginnings of this investigation, we confronted some very hard choices that we knew would have negative repercussions on our organization and on us personally. And we made those choices anyway because it was our job and our duty to do so. I feel strongly that that's the same position Congress is in now, and they should step up to the plate and do their job. It doesn't mean that the president will be removed from office or should be removed from office or will be impeached, but it is absolutely clear to me that the time has come for Congress to pursue a dedicated impeachment inquiry. I think it would solidify their position legally as they begin the process of going into court to fight over access to witnesses, and it would provide a more coordinated and coherent approach to having other witnesses come in and testify.
John Dean, I think it's fair to say that this was not the blockbuster hearing that some Democrats had hoped for. It was not like yours when you testified during Watergate. And so in your experience, the snap assessments right afterwards sometimes change over the next days and weeks. And when the smoke clears, where do you think we'll be?
Well, I think what's going to happen is there will be further hearings. I think McGahn will testify. I think Lewandowski will testify. I think the hearings or the investigation is ongoing. So I don't look at this as even the beginning or the end, and things are very much in progress. I think the president has some serious problems. So this isn't the last chapter.
I will say, Andy McCabe, one of the things we heard from Republicans yesterday was thanking the Attorney General William Barr for his investigation into the origins of the investigation, talking about U.S. Attorney John Durham, who is also investigating this, to an extent foreshadowing what might come. Do you, from your position, worry then that the narrative here, now that Robert Mueller has testified, there aren't a lot more bullets in the chamber for Democrats here unless they get Don McGahn soon, which isn't going to happen, that the narrative and the control over it might shift to William Barr?
Well, there's no question the Republicans would like the narrative to shift in that direction. I mean, that's exactly what we saw from them yesterday. And I think what, for me, was one of the more frustrating moments of the director's testimony. He really didn't push back on many of those false narratives or misrepresentations of fact that you heard in the conspiracy theories and other things that the Republicans laid out there yesterday. As far as the investigation of the origins of the investigation, I can't believe I just said that. If it's a legitimate, fact-based and legally based inquiry into where this investigation came from, I mean, that is not something that I worry about, because I'm absolutely confident in the work that we did and the necessity we had to take the steps we did to investigate whether or not the president had engaged in a federal crime or was a threat to national security. I think that 400-page report is essentially the best answer to the question of why was this investigated. Well, now we see reams and reams of conduct that leads right in both of those directions. So from that perspective, I don't worry about it. If it becomes a bit of political theater, as most things seem to do these days, then that could be certainly corrosive and distracting to the American people who were keen enough and interested enough to tune in yesterday to find out exactly what the president and his associates have been doing.
John Dean, we're almost out of time, but final word, you think that the next thing we see is the court compelling Don McGahn to testify?
I do. I don't think the courts are necessarily a friendly forum for the committee. They tend to stay out of political disputes and try to let Congress and the executive branch work that out. However, when they find it necessary, they do step in. And this total defiance of subpoenas is just extraordinary. And I think the courts won't like that. For example, during Watergate, the Senate and the House never got the Nixon tapes. They only got them through the prosecutor. So they weren't particularly helpful during Watergate. But here's a very different situation. And they're aware of what's going on.
Well, it's July. What month? What month do you think that the courts will take definitive action here?
I think that the courts are in process right now. I would say it could take 8 months.
Puts us well past the initial primaries in the presidential election. There could be a Democratic nominee by that time.
It could go right into the election.
Yep.
John Dean, Andrew McCabe, thank you very much for all of your experience in these matters. Another legal setback for the Trump administration. A federal judge has blocked their effort to dramatically limit asylum seekers from Central America by forcing them to apply for asylum outside of the U.S. The California judge ordered the Trump administration to keep accepting asylum claims. Human trafficking victims or those denied asylum elsewhere would have been allowed to apply for U.S. asylum. The White House has just released a statement slamming the judge's decision as, quote, tyranny of a dysfunctional system that lets a judge dictate immigration policy.
So President Trump has vetoed 3 bills aimed at blocking emergency arms sales to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. They would replenish part of the Saudi arsenal lawmakers say has been used against civilians in Yemen's civil war. The White House says the weapon sales are crucial to protect against the growing threat from Iran. The Trump administration is taking heat for not confronting the Saudis over the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
A French daredevil's bid to cross the English Channel on his jet-powered flyboard has failed. CNN affiliate BFM TV says Frankie Zapata fell in the water with his flyboard while landing on a refueling platform midway through the attempt. That is pretty impressive there, John. The French media reports he was around 11 miles away from the finish. Zapata was hoping this would be his longest flight after his impressive cameo at Paris's Bastille Day parade.
I mean, who would have ever thought that flying across the English Channel in one of those things might be a bad idea?
He's going to try again. Don't count him out.
And Emmanuel Macron, he's going to like it. You can see him nodding right there. The big question for Democrats this morning, what next? What will they do with this testimony they heard yesterday from Robert Mueller? There is one man who has a big say in this. The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, joins us next.
Summer's not the time for making bucket lists. Bookers know summer is for booking it. Like booking a beachside resort and ordering 2 more tacos than you need to. Check. Showing the deep end who's boss. Check. Starting a scooter gang with the fam. Check. Awesome. Bookers know summer won't last forever.
You're going to thank me.
So be a booker at Booking.com, the world's #1 choice for booking accommodations.
My experience with USA Air has been excellent. They really appreciate the military family, and it really shows.
With all that USAA offers, why go with anybody else? We know their rates are good. We know that they're always going to take care of us.
It was an instant savings, and I should have changed a long time ago.
It was funny because when we would call another insurance company, they would say, oh, we can't be USAA.
We're the Weber family.
We're the Tennies.
We're the Hells, and we're USAA members for life.
Get your USAA auto insurance quote today.
Upgrade your style with over 250 floors on sale now at Lumber Liquidators Flooring Company. Save up to 36% on premium Bellawood hardwood floors, plus 24 months special financing. Lumber Liquidators. Beautiful floors for less.
Most people think a button is just a button. That a speaker is just a speaker. Or that the journey can't be the destination. Most people haven't driven a Lincoln.
Discover the Lincoln approach to craftsmanship at the Lincoln Summer Invitation. Right now, get 0% APR on all 2019 Lincoln vehicles, plus no payments for up to 90 days. Only at your Lincoln dealer.
LG signature. At T-Mobile, for $40 a line for 4 lines, it's all included for the whole family, starting with unlimited data. Use as much as you want, when you want. And if you like Netflix, it's included on us. Plus, no surprises on your bill. Taxes and fees are included. And now, for a limited time, with each new line, get one of our latest smartphones included. That's right, only $40 a line for 4 lines, and smartphones are included for the whole family.
Nice car. Not so nice scratch. Wouldn't it be nice if removing ugly scratches from your car was this easy? Now with new Finish Scratch Doctor, removing surface scratches is easy. In fact, independent laboratory tests have proven Scratch Doctor to be the best scratch remover available. Scratch Doctor with advanced microtechnology also removes paint scrapes, scuffs, haze, and swirl marks. So get Scratch Doctor.
#1 rated Scratch Doctor. Available at O'Reilly Auto, Home Depot, Pep Boys, Target, AutoZone, Walmart, and other leading stores.
You might take something for your heart, your joints, or your digestion. So why wouldn't you take something for the most important part of you, your brain? With an ingredient originally discovered in jellyfish, Prevagen has been shown in clinical trials to improve short-term memory. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
You would not tell us whether the president should be impeached, nor did we ask you, since it is our responsibility to determine the proper remedy for the conduct outlined in your report. Whether we decide to impeach the president in the House or we do not, we must take any action necessary to protect the country while he is in office.
That's House Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff delivering his closing remarks after Robert Mueller's testimony and addressing a major question facing Democrats. Should they pursue impeachment? Now, CNN has learned the Democrats debated the issue behind closed doors after the hearings. We are told it was a robust discussion. Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, the chair of the Intelligence Committee. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for being with us. Know you've been busy. What's different this morning? We heard from Robert Mueller yesterday before Judiciary and your committee, so what's changed?
Well, I think for the first time, the American people got to hear from the man who did the investigation himself. His work was not filtered by Bill Barr, who misrepresented it. It wasn't filtered by the president, who certainly misrepresents it on a daily basis. But this is the guy who spent the last 2 years of his life, has served the country his entire life, talking about that work and laying out how unethical, unpatriotic, criminal these actions are, to willingly accept help from a foreign government to obstruct justice. So I think hearing that from the man who did the work was powerful.
The words you just used, those were your words, though. Those were not necessarily his words. His words were typically yes, no, correct. If it's in the report, I agree with it.
That's correct. To use that metaphor. Yes, that's true. He was a reluctant witness. We understood from the very moment he said he wasn't going to come in, that he wanted the 10 minutes to be his statement that, he was going to be a very recalcitrant witness, and he was. But nonetheless, getting him to acknowledge the false claims of exoneration by the president, getting him to describe just how troubling the president's conduct was, and even though he was reluctant, as you can imagine, to provide the soundbite, the president is immoral, the president is unpatriotic, that was the essence of what he had to say. And that has power. Now, whether it will change the equation or not, I don't know. I was, as you might recall, very circumspect about how much attitudes would change as a result of really any hearing. If after the president's racist comments of the last 2 weeks, if they haven't moved people, I wasn't sure that anything Bob Mueller could say would. But nonetheless, I think it's important to get all these facts out to the public.
What happened at that Democratic caucus meeting that we understand was a robust discussion that concerned what to do with impeachment?
Well, I don't discuss the contents of our caucus meetings, but look, we have members who feel, passionately about this issue. I think we all do. We're all wrestling with it. I think those that are ready to pull the trigger and say, let's begin the impeachment, feel their hand is even stronger after this hearing. I tried an impeachment case in the Senate about 10 years ago, a corrupt judge. We convicted him, so I have some sense of what's necessary to make that case. I have very little illusion about getting a conviction in the Senate, but there's another jury that I am more concerned about, and that's the jury of the American people. And I want to be sure if we head down that road that we have the case to make the American people.
Are you closer today than yesterday?
Well, I do think that Robert Mueller lived up to expectations, at least mine. He stuck to his report. That's what he said he was going to do. So I didn't go into the hearing expecting new facts.
What do you say about all the critics who say, oh, his performance was halting? He had trouble with the facts. He had trouble with the language. The president's been very critical of how he seemed. Rudy Giuliani. Is there any merit to that argument?
No. Yes, the halting nature of his answers made questioning him a challenge. As a former prosecutor, it meant that, you take each witness as they come, and it meant it wasn't easy to get him to tell a narrative. But what's more important than the style we saw of the witness is the substance, and the substance, I think, was just devastating.
The word you hear is optics. You're saying it wasn't about the optics.
For me, it's not about the optics. For me, it's about what does this say about the president's conduct? And what does this say about what Congress ought to do about that?
What does it say about the president's conduct to you?
Unethical, unpatriotic, wrong, and criminal.
All of those things, especially the last one, criminal, meet the definition by my reading, and I'm not saying I agree with your assessment, but of what is impeachable.
I think that's unquestionably the case, but that's what I think. Can we make the case to the country? And does the country benefit going through an impeachment if it's going to be unsuccessful? And we know in the Senate, at least, it would be unsuccessful. So I'm not there yet, but I'm keeping an open mind, and I may get there.
Let me read you what Dan Balls of the Washington Post wrote about yesterday. The barriers to impeachment have always made it a challenging option, giving that Republican control of the Senate to the frustration of some Democrats. But other Democrats were advocating long before Mueller wrapped up his investigation that the party's focus should be on the 2020 election rather than impeachment. That now is the only realistic course for settling the question of the future of Trump's presidency. Dan Ball's writing there. 2020 is the answer, not impeachment.
2020 is unquestionably the only way he gets removed from office, so we can never lose sight of that. I have tried to put the political question out of my head. That is, does an impeachment help us in 2020 or does it hurt us politically? Because I don't think it's the right question to ask. But we do need to be realistic, and that is the only way he's leaving office, at least at this point, is by being voted out. And I think our efforts need to be made in every respect to make sure we turn out our people. But on the policy question, what's the best thing, what's the right thing for the country? Should we put the country through an impeachment? I haven't been convinced yet that we should. And going through that kind of momentous and disruptive experience for the country, I think, is not something we go into lightly.
Some house cleaning notes about yesterday. Representative Krishnamurthy had an exchange with Robert Mueller where the former special counsel seemed to indicate there was an ongoing FBI counterintelligence investigation still into aspects of Russia. Do you know what he's talking about?
I do. And I mean, this is one of the things that we have been pressing to get information from the FBI. And we're getting some information, although it is halting. And that is, this began as a counterintelligence investigation. Mueller said basically when he picked it up, he turned it into a criminal case, and the counterintelligence information was sent to the headquarters. We still don't know the full results of those counterintelligence leads. Were they followed up? Were some of them dropped? Were there findings made? Are there people still serving in the administration that shouldn't have a security clearance? Are there steps we need to do to protect the country? That's what we're trying to find out.
Why hasn't Corey Lewandowski been called to testify before? I would assume it would be the House Judiciary Committee. That's not your problem directly, but as a member of the caucus, it is. He has no claim to privilege.
No, he doesn't. And actually, we had him testify in the Intel Committee, and he essentially said, I'm not going to answer those questions. And we said, are you claiming privilege? And he said, no, I'm essentially not going to do it because the White House doesn't want me to do it. And the Republicans were just fine with that. And that was, of course, the flaw with how the GOP ran their investigation. I think he should be called. He needs to be brought in. I think he's a very material witness on the obstruction of justice. So I would hope and expect that that's a priority.
There are Democrats who look and say, why haven't you done that already? There are Democratic activists frustrated with the pace of all of this.
Look, I'm frustrated with the pace of it. We are subpoenaing witnesses and testimony. We are having to go to court to enforce those subpoenas. That takes time. That's the whole reason why the Trump administration is obstructing this way. But I do think we need to understand that if we declare that we are now in the midst of an impeachment, it doesn't bring McGahn in tomorrow. We still have to go to court to force his testimony. It's not like that turns on some magic switch and all of a sudden Corey Lewandowski says, okay, when do I show up? We're still going to have to enforce this because the president has embarked on this maximal obstruction campaign of his. Unprecedented history. We are winning in the courts, but yes, it is frustrating. The president obstructed justice, and now he is obstructing Congress.
You throw these phrases around like the president obstructed justice, and then at the same time, you say, I'm not ready for an impeachment inquiry yet. And you see there's a contradiction there. Some people look at that and see a contradiction.
Well, look, I would be delighted if we had a prospect of removing him through impeachment, but we don't. And the most attractive thing to me about an impeachment is that it's among the strongest forms of censure that we have. But the same is true of an acquittal for the president. That's the strongest form of exoneration for him. And that stays my hand.
Devin Nunes, who is the ranking member, who was the chair of the Intelligence Committee, you've worked with for some time. There are rumors that the current Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats, could be on the way out, and that one of the possible replacements would be Congressman Nunes. Would he be an appropriate choice to take over as Director of National Intelligence?
Well, you can see why I wouldn't be eager to comment on that. But I will say this. I have tremendous respect for Dan Coats. You want someone in that position who is willing to speak truth to power, who is a good manager of people. I think Dan Coats has done an admirable job of both, and I hope he continues in that office.
Would Devin Nunes do the same?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Chairman Adam Schiff, thank you for being with us today. We appreciate it. Look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you.
Allison?
All right, fighting words from Joe Biden. He is warning that he will not be as polite at the next debates next week, and his rivals seem to be taking off the gloves too. We get the bottom line next.
Nothing comes easily. That's what happens in golf and in life. I'm very fortunate that I can lean on people, and that for me is what teamwork's all about. You can't do everything yourself. You need someone to guide you and help you make those tough decisions. That's Morgan Stanley. They're industry leaders, but the most important thing is they want to do it the right way. I'm really excited to be part of the Morgan Stanley team. I'm Justin Rose. We are Morgan Stanley.
We all use our phones differently.
Why Khadijah chose Verizon.
I can manage the time they spend on their phone, who they're texting with, all of that is a win for all of us.
The network more people rely on gives you more. Like plans families can mix and match, including the new Just Kids plan. That's Verizon.
Wow, that's Ensure Max Protein with high protein and 1 gram sugar.
It's a sit-up, banana, bend at the waist. Trying.
Keep it up. You'll get there.
Whoa!
30 grams of protein and 1 gram of sugar. Ensure Max Protein.
Where some see a barber, I see a